So usually when I do these little video vignettes about my cybersecurity path, I like to choose some sort of a more interesting background, but this is my office here and also serves as the studio, if you will, for the Virtual CISO Moment, which is the podcast that has really become a passion of mine. I just get a chance to interview folks with great stories. And actually, it was that experience of talking with other people's stories about their cybersecurity path that really got me to think about, well, I think I want to like lay mine down too on video. So here we are. And it's Friday, and I didn't want to let the week go by without at least some more thoughts. I think when I last left, I was at Middle Tennessee State University, and I had just gotten to the point where I realized that in my career, I had spent my entire career getting computers to talk to each other. I loved networking. It was such a passion of mine. It was so cool. It was like all different protocols. Back then, it was a multi-protocol environment. I talked about that before. Not like it is kind of like generic with IP today, but we had like IP, IPX, we had serial, we had token ring, we had whatever the IBM 3270, whatever that connection was that they had. So many things that we had, and so many different ways to make it work. I just loved it completely. And then, of course, our wide area connections were very primitive at the time. At home, we had dial-up, and for those of us who were really lucky, as I said in one of the earlier episodes when I was at the University of Tennessee, I had an ISDN line, which is like absolutely fabulous. But so at the point that I left in the last episode, I was at Middle Tennessee State, and I realized that I had flipped. I was starting to do more now about blocking things as opposed to making things connect together, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's actually really, I guess, what the crux of security is about. You want to block those who are not authorized to get to information or resources to ensure that they can't get there. So I began to embrace it a little bit more, and this is where the governance started to come into play. Nowadays, one of the standards out there is ISO 27001 2022, I think is the latest iteration. Before that, it was 2013, and before that, might have been another iteration. But before that, there wasn't a separate iteration for information security management systems. It was under a more broad category of the 17,000 series, and specifically, it was 17,999, I believe. It was either that or 17,799. I think it was 17,999. But regardless, when I was at Middle Tennessee State, there was a push to create more of a standards-based information security program. And ISO was really the only one when I was doing the research that I knew. And so that was what I started to align the program around. Little did I know that back then, and so we're talking, 2008 right now, so 14 years ago, that was the beginning of my career of frameworks and aligning companies with frameworks. I just had a call today with a prospect, and they're a law firm, and they were talking about that they were trying to build a security program. And my first question was, well, what framework have you adopted, or have you? And they said no. And there different frameworks for different areas, very important. But back then, I was just learning about frameworks. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I liked that, and I liked something else too. So as I'm going more into information security, I realized that, I want to do this security stuff. I want to get certified. I want to do this CISSP, which apparently was like really good certification. And I went through the whole aspect of doing the CISSP, and come to find out that my strongest domain was not networking, was actually risk management. And that was key for directing my future activities. I took the CISSP, I passed it, and that was all good. And I was definitely on my way for security. And also during this time, I realized that to advance my career, that I wanted to do more in the education field as far as furthering my formal education, because there was a position that I wanted to go for, but they required a master's degree. And I am one of those that, luck, they say, is when opportunity meets preparation. And so I had opportunity, but I didn't have preparation. And I'm like, I'm never going to be at that point again. So I went through and I was working at a university. It was very convenient for me to go for my master's degree in information systems. And they had different subdomains, sub concentrations, and one of them was information security. But at the time, I had just gotten my CISSP. It seemed rather redundant. So I decided to do project management for my master's in information systems, and that was the right thing to do. Learned a lot about different methodologies for project management, and actually learned more about risk assessment there, but more on from the project side risk assessment, and absolutely loved it. So 2007, 2008, 2009 goes around. 2010 is when I graduate with my master's. Woohoo! I mean, that was cool. Going back to school after you had been out for a while is tough. So I hadn't been in a degree program. If I started in 2007 and I graduated my bachelor's in 1992, do the math, that's 15 years. That's a long time to be away from the grind and the whole methodology of being in school, and plus going to school full time. But definitely got a price discount. I could do one class for free at Middle Tennessee State, took advantage of that. There were some fees I had to take care of, but generally speaking, I got my master's for very low cost. And in 2010, I graduated with honors. I can't remember the exact honors. I was part of the honor society. And, it's sad. I have a pin. It's a beta, I can't recall. And that's sad because I should remember it. But you get older, you forget things sometimes. So now I position myself where I'm basically now doing all this information security stuff. And actually, in recognition of that, I had another promotion because I had started in Middle Tennessee as network manager and then promoted to director of network services and then promoted to assistant vice president for networking and IT security, which was really the equivalent of the CISO without the actual title of CISO. And now, although I had hated several years ago about the fact that I was like blocking people more than actually making them connect, now I enjoyed it because I understood it from a risk management standpoint. And I began to think that maybe I need to look beyond Middle Tennessee State University. So I had been there since 1998. It's about 12 years now. And I absolutely love that job. Probably if I look back on all of the jobs where I was not self-employed, because my self-employed job is my favorite job I've had. I highly recommend it. But for the jobs where I actually worked for somebody else, I think Middle Tennessee State was my favorite job. And I could see myself retiring there, but I felt the need to go further, to grow further. And I looked at a few jobs, and there was one that really caught my eye. It was for Nashville, Davidson County, the first CISO. Now, they had a little bit of an issue. They didn't have a CISO beforehand because they didn't really have a business need for it, except for when in late 2007, there was a big breach over, I think, 330,000 voter registration records. And there was a new mayor at the time. The mayor's name was Carl Dean. Didn't really look too well to have that as in your first tenure. Dean wanted to get results. He convened a committee of experts from the Nashville area and security, and they recommended two things. Create a program that is standards-based and bring someone in to lead it. That someone was me, and I'll talk about that in the next episode.